Meeting of the Revere City Council, please come to order. Want to rise and salute the flag as a customer. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yep. That's a good idea. Very good idea. Roll call of the members.
Councillor Keefe?
Here.
Here. Councillor McKenna?
Here.
Here. Councillor Powers is absent. Councillor Rotondo is absent. Councillor Zambuto?
Here.
Here. And Chairman Haas?
Here.
Present.
We also have Councillor Patch with us this evening. And that's it. All right. And Council President Janino. I'd like to take up Squire Circle Associates first. It'll be a quick meeting. And Councilor Ganasso, thank you for showing up. All right, the Squire Associates, 61 Squire Road, Revere, seeks permission from the Revere City Council to reconstruct and convert the existing 2 non-conforming outdoor advertising billboards to billboards with digital billboards on lots 840, 841, and 862 Revere Broadway on Ferragamo Way. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor.
perhaps I'm vague, but my memory, I can't participate in this, but
I
my
understand
memory
that.
serves that they wanted to withdraw without prejudice. Am I wrong? Oh,
No.
I apologize.
Yeah. That's the rumor at one time. They were going to withdraw, but they did not. They changed their mind. Yes, right. Any discussion?
Mr. President, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ganasso?
Mr. Chairman, although I'm not a member of the zoning subcommittee, I am a Ward 3 city councilor, and that resides in Ward 3. It's been some 3 weeks since we had the open discussion regarding the billboards, and I have not received one phone call in recognition of opposition. So, and therefore, in the absence of not getting any calls, there's basically only one household on Ferragamo Way. Yep. The rest of the area is saturated with businesses. So, if there were ever a spot or a location for a billboard, of which I'm not very happy with, but it is there, it will be aesthetically a little bit of an improvement. So I'd be voting for it with a heavy heart. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Council. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Keefe.
Well, I would agree. You know, the digital billboards can at times be more aesthetically pleasing. We did hear from the Revere Beautification Committee, and there was some opposition there. However, I wouldn't say it's too much. One of the questions I had, you know, being newer to the council, is I was looking for information in regards to how many other billboards they owned, and it looked like that group had 3, and they were only stating there was 2. I was under the impression in the past there have been some concessions made with a reduction in the amount of billboards or taking one away, and or would there be ability to offer to the city an additional fee or an additional monetary value to the city with an additional billboard usage?
Donate 10 hours a week. 5-minute recess. I'd like to also introduce people with us today from the city. We have Chief Doherty, Benny Christopher from the Building Department, and Dan Manor from the Public Safety. Right. Thank you, gentlemen, for showing. All right, we'd like to request the applicant to give us at least 10 hours of public service announcements for these digital billboards. So can you make note of that, City Clerk? Yeah.
Council Haas.
Yes. Council Keefe.
I would request that the applicant be consistent with other special permits we've granted in the past.
Right. The last one was Clear Channel. Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Chairman,
Right. Councilor Ganasso?
was the applicant requested to appear at the subcommittee?
No.
He wasn't?
Was he? Everyone was notified, yeah.
And he chose not to show?
Well, let's wait till,
Why are we even entertaining the application then if he doesn't think enough to show?
well, I call this for second reading, but we want to
Well,
do
I would
this first.
suggest that we hold this off.
Okay, hold
until
it off.
the applicant either appears or this, we don't know
We'll
his
hold it off
intention.
to the later on in the meeting. Okay.
Absolutely.
So we're going to delay this until the end. All right, also now we have C-1603, James Stvil, 95 Lincoln Street, Saugus, Mass. We'd like to hear from both sides. Ira representing the city and Larry Simeone representing the petitioner. Larry?
Yep.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm sorry, Zoning Board of the City Council. Good start. Anyway, we're here on the subcommittee review of the application of James Stvil. Mr. Stvil was on his way. He was at the building. He was at the fire department waiting to meet with Mr. Manif, who obviously isn't there, to pick up his permit. But I'm sure Mr. Manif will have something to say about that later. The applicant, yeah, sure.
Can I just interrupt counsel for a second? What was that? We weren't what?
He's my client.
Waiting
is
for his
wait-
permit? Is that what
Yeah.
was it? What did you mean by that?
That's exactly where he is.
Oh, he's
late.
waiting for
He's gonna be late.
For us? You
He's gonna
said
be late,
permit.
Chief.
You said
He's gonna be
permit.
late. He
Don't
said
be
he was
like
there to
that. Don't
pick
say
up his permit.
yeah.
All right, guys, come on, let's go.
And Chief, if you think you're gonna bully me, start now.
Bullying
Because you ain't bullying
Don't
anybody.
say things that ain't
I
happening.
don't give a damn how long you've been chief.
Thank you.
Play by the rules like everybody else. These are the council rules, chief. All right, Mr. Chairman, we're here before you because Mr. Stvil, for now the second time on rehearing, has sought a special permit to change a non-conforming use from one non-conforming use to another non-conforming use, and to modify an existing non-conforming structure. The zoning ordinances that are involved are 1740-020, where the applicant seeks to change from one non-conforming use, here commercial garage, known as auto repair, to another non-conforming use called special garage, which is auto body. He also seeks to make exterior modifications to an existing non-conforming structure in accordance with 1740-030. Now, this is a rehearing from the Superior Court based on a judgment of May 26, 2015. Judge Paul D. Wilson, case number 1204524. On March 24th, 2016, I submitted a package for this body to look at. It's a history of the litigation from 2012 to 2014. It has exhibits A through M, and an additional exhibit with the spray booth was added, Exhibit N, on April 4th, 2016. To my right is Exhibit H, which is essentially the elevations proposed for the improvements of the individual building. Those of us who know the building know it's a very old building, constructed in 1925. It is in very poor shape. We're proposing to purchase the building, and Mr. Stvil was going to do an exterior renovation with windows, exterior improvement, roofing, and so forth, and adding a spray booth to somewhere around $1.1 million. If you look at the proposal before you, Mr. Chairman, it is in Exhibit H that I submitted my package to you. You'll see that the exterior renovations clearly will be, the exterior renovations are proposed for the entire structure, essentially making it more office-like, as the subcommittee, as the site plan review committee wanted when I met with them on various times. It also has a proposed floor plan, which will have a variety of different utilizations, most of which is interior parking of customer cars, where the proposal has no off-street parking. The existing facility has the spray booth, and I have Mr. Freeman here to discuss the spray booth with you in greater detail. It also shows a layout of how the circulation of the cars inside the building. It has 3 exterior parking spaces and some exterior proposed planting areas, which was hoped would limit any of the use of the sidewalks for parking illegally, as has been done for many years. At the April 4th, 2016 hearing, I went over the hours of operation. They are Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. The spray booth, as I said, would be discussed, and I'll probably bring him up in just a few moments. Saturdays are 9 to 1, and there's no operation on Sunday. The Saturday operation, as proposed, is to pick up cars only, as they do on 14 Furlong. Now, on 14 Furlong, that's where his current operation of Majestic Motors is. He operates an auto body shop there and has since 2004. And that auto body shop, he hopes to purchase this property and move that auto body shop to this location, where he would own the facility. It would be a new spray booth, and he would be in control. At 14 Furlong Drive, my client is a tenant, so he is limited on what, if any, improvements he can actually make to that facility. As to the operation here at 855 Broadway, we would have 4 people working on cars, 2 auto techs, 2 mechanics, and 1 administrative assistant. And again, as I said, there would be no parking of any customer cars or cars that have been worked on, or damaged vehicles and so forth, as a condition. Now, as to the neighborhood, when you look at the neighborhood of North Broadway, you'll see it has a variety of commercial uses, which include a limo service, a breakfast place, auto repair, gasoline stations with auto repair, auto body shops, auto parts, and residence. It is significant as to its wide range of commercial entities at this site and in this area of Broadway. When I was before you on April 4th, 2016, we noted to you that Judge Wilson on May 26, 2015, decreed that this honorable body's decision denying my client his special permits that he sought for in 2012 was to be annulled, and the matter was to go to rehearing. Now, the council had an executive session on September of 2015, and notwithstanding that counsel for the city did not choose to appeal, it has taken almost a year to get to this hearing. I will tell you, if you look at Exhibit A, which I've provided for each and every one of you, it is the judgment of Judge Wilson, based upon the facts as presented to him. So I'll draw your attention to page 3 of Exhibit A. And it is the second sentence. It's the third sentence. It says, the parties have stipulated that the Revere building inspector, as the zoning enforcement officer of the city of Revere, agreed that the building was a pre-existing non-conforming structure, and that the most recent use by the trust was a pre-existing non-conforming use, and that he, meaning the building inspector, agreed with the site plan review committee about the zoning relief necessary to implement the plaintiff's plan. That was the agreement made by the city and its attorney and myself on behalf of Mr. Stvil. Since that time, I talked to you a little bit about Mr. Stvil's background. I reminded you that he's not an unknown quantity. It's not like he just showed up here. In 1987, he had J&J Auto and Dick Street in Revere. And as I said, in 2004, some 12 years ago, he's operated at 14 Furlong Drive. There has been no violations from the Board of Health. Now, recently, when I came to the hearing on April 4th, 2016, I was informed for the first time that an inspection was done on my client's premises, notwithstanding the fact that we're all represented by counsel. And an inspection was done on that date, and a variety of violations were listed. Along with that set of violations, there were historic violations presented at 14 Furlong Drive. There were 4 of them that went from, I believe, 2006, 9, 11, and 13. And when you look at those violations, if the council saw fit to read them, okay, you'll see they're pretty much the same, over and over and over again. And it's, the spray booth is horrible, it's outdated, the mixing room is inadequate, and the fire suppression system is inadequate. Now, I've been pretty clear to the council, and my client was pretty clear to the court, that the reason why he wants to buy this and put the money he's going to be able to get a loan from is because he wants to get out of the situation that is 14 Furlong Drive. He doesn't want to stay at the old custom auto body. He doesn't want to be tied to a landlord. No one's going to put in $200,000-$300,000 of their own money fixing a spray booth on a facility that he doesn't even have a long-term lease on. So he's trying to move off that facility, and he's trying to be more in his own control. And that's why he seeks this permit. Now, on May 17, 2016, I tried to get Chief Doherty to meet with me. I wanted to meet with him because one of the particular violations in question addressed the use of the property. And I sent to him a copy of Mr. DeCristoforo's deposition, wherein he confirms what the Site Plan Review Committee had established, that the prior use or the existing use is an auto repair shop. Now, I asked the chief if he, I asked the chief and I've asked the fire department through Chief Inspector Maniff to re-inspect the premises so to deal with those January 25th, 2016 violations. They have yet to respond for a reinspection, even up until Friday, where I was making calls to Mr. Manoff, which were not returned. And I really wanted to speak to Chief Doherty about this allegation of occupancy permit, especially in light of the fact that my client has been at this location from May of 2014, and the building inspector has not issued a cease and desist, or any other department has issued a cease and desist for the use of 855 Broadway. Now, while the chief unfortunately refused my request to sit down, Chief Inspector Manoff did issue a permit to my client for repair of the fire alarm system, but he has since refused to give two permits that he says are part of the violation: a permit for a acetylene torch and a permit for a waste oil tank. My understanding is with it, and I could be wrong, my client's understanding was he was supposed to get a permit for the waste oil tank today, but it didn't happen. So on May 23rd, this date, I sent another letter to the chief. We've now marked it Exhibit 8O for this hearing. And basically, I'm wondering why, after all this time my client's been in operation, Mr. Manoff has decided he needs an occupancy permit. I'm under the understanding that when my client and the landlord went to site plan with me, I was there, Mr. DeCristoforo was there, we talked about the proposal. We were in the middle of litigation when this happened. Everybody should have known what was going on. And the letter is clear. Look at the May 15, 2014 letter from the Site Plan Committee written by Frank Stringy, who also testified that the pre-existing use of the premises was auto repair in his deposition. Frank Stringy wrote, and I've attached it to the May 23rd letter, he wrote that this was for the continued occupancy of a non-conforming commercial garage. Continued occupancy, not new occupancy, not changed occupancy, not let me start all over again. That's what he wrote. And during that time, we were in court. So my client went and occupied the premises as an auto repair person, as a tenant for the landlord. The landlord went to great expense in putting up a fire alarm system. Landlord consulted the electrician, I believe his name is Len Pagliarulo. Pagliarulo Electric put in the system. I understand that he's now the electrical inspector. He just recently repaired the system. And he told the landlords that a fire suppression system wasn't required. And we never heard anything after that. Mr. Stvil began operation. We only had one problem that I'm aware of. Mr. DeCristo sent a cease and desist order because on the sign, Mr. Stvil unfortunately used his regular sign that said auto body repair on it. I believe Mr. DeCristoforo got some complaints about that. He issued a cease and desist for any operation of auto body repair. I went down there, Mr. Manoff went down there, we both told our client that you need to put that sign down, which he did immediately, and he changed it, so it did not advertise auto body repair. So, here we are, and I can tell you, I've been doing this for a long time, 25-some years. And I've worked with Ben DeCristoforo for a long time. He was sitting to my immediate right on May 15, 2014, as he testifies. Take my word for it. If Ben DeCristoforo wanted an occupancy permit, he would have said it. And he didn't, which leads me to believe I didn't need to get one. And if he said I needed an occupancy permit for Mr. Stvil, I may have disagreed with him. And we may have had a discussion about it. But I can tell you, he never said a word. Nor did Mr. Stringy or anybody else. But now we come in, and Chief Inspector Manna brings up this occupancy issue. The issue before this committee is pretty clear, and we did have a neighborhood meeting. It was a good neighborhood meeting. I mean, some of them are really bad. This was a very good one. This will be my second good neighborhood meeting with these people. They're articulate, they speak about their concerns, and there was some discussion about modifying the building a particular way. There was some discussion about improving, trying to keep some parking on Folsom Street on the left-hand side. But all in all, I believe Len Orlandello said it best, and he would rather have the court tell us. That's what he said. And if you're a sitting ward councilman, if you're a sitting city councilman, it's pretty hard to go against that. I mean, he's basically saying, I, as a taxpayer, want you to go back to court. And that's probably where we'll go. But what I don't think is fair is to have the lawyer that represents you come before you and taint, tarnish, and destroy any bit of credibility in this process. And he's done that. He did it at the hearing. He says, oh, the use is, gee, it's not auto repair, it's auto bus storage, 1708-165. Totally forgets the fact that he sat next to Ben DeCristoforo at the deposition and sat next to Frank Stringy when they testified as it was. Must obviously not have read the judge's decision where it said that we both agreed as to the existing conditions. And he must not have seen Exhibit O and Exhibit D, which clearly state in May 15, 2014, site plan review letter says what the existing conditions are, and 529-12. Frank Stringy sets forth what the relief required is. The relief required is in 529, it's Exhibit D in your package. It's Mr. Stringy articulated that you're going from an auto repair shop to an auto body shop. It's just not fair. And I don't know what you'll shape your decision, Mr. Chairman, but I'll tell you that that particular issue is a red herring. It is not a legitimate basis for denial, nor is attacking my client's persona and his history. Because let me tell you, when and if we go to court, I'll be subpoenaing the rest of the fire department documents. We'll see how many other auto body shops get cited. I would think 4 citations in 12 years isn't exactly a bad record, especially when you're being beat up because of the condition of the landlord's premises, not your own. I'm going to introduce Mr. Friedman. I'll be willing to answer any questions you want. Mr. Friedman will go over the fire suppression system, the spray booth at this time, and he has a handout for you. I'd ask you to listen to him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Simeone.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian Friedman. I'm an automotive equipment consultant, and I represent AccuDraft Automotive Paint Spray Booths. I have a handout for you that I'd like to pass along. There's 14 and then 2 more detailed ones there. Yep, just. Paint spray booth that Majestic Auto Body is proposing to put in their facility is an AccuDraft Titan. Now, AccuDraft has a whole array of automotive paint spray booths of all different configurations and sizes. The Titan is their flagship state-of-the-art spray booth. It is a dual-wall, insulated, downdraft automotive booth Basically, what that infers, as opposed to older technologies which don't have heat and airflow, this one actually has the mechanicals where it takes existing air from outside the building, brings it inside to the mechanicals. It's pre-filtered, preheated. It's then taken over the ceiling filter of the booth, then drawn into the pit, which has exhaust filters in it, and then it's put into an exhaust unit where it's exhausted outside. That's in the spray mode. In the bake mode, it actually recirculates 80% of the heat in the cure mode. As I said, it's dual wall insulated. It's extremely quiet. It's belt driven. I actually have a video here if you'd like to pass it along and play it. This was actually taken at a trade show in New Jersey where they had this exact same model booth that was up and running in a convention center. And you can hear, just so you can pass it around and play it, how quiet it is. This particular model, we have also put in a number of government locations as well. And the last one that we put in was this past summer at Bay Path Regional in Charlton, Mass. They actually put in 2 of these units in an outdoor configuration. And then the summer before that, we actually put in 2 on an indoor location at Essex North Shore Agricultural Technical, which used to be Essex Aggie and North Shore Technical. They combined. And they had looked at all different types of manufacturers' equipment, and this is what they felt was best suited. The question came up as far as the efficiency of the filters, and we do have documentation that the exhaust filters are actually 99% efficient. And that's basically what EPA also wants. This is from 2008, and it says, alert new EPA regulation. A new national standard now requires all shops that spray coatings containing a targeted hazardous air pollutant, HAP, to conduct spray operations in a booth outfitted with an exhaust filter with a removal efficiency of 98% or greater, and ours does meet and exceed that. This basically, as I said, is a state-of-the-art flagship booth. There are other booths in the area, but most of them are older technologies and decades old, so there's not even any comparison when you're talking about this particular booth. It has a lot of environmental as well as energy savings devices in it. It has variable frequency drives, smart control panels, standby modes. Getting back to the filters also, it was brought up at the last meeting that was here. They were concerned about the filter changes. One thing about this booth also is that it has a high pressure sensor, whereas if the filters aren't changed properly, the booth will actually shut down. So it can't operate if it does have older clogged filters. And it actually behooves the shop to change the filters more often because they're going to get cleaner jobs, and in the end, it's going to save the lifespan of their expensive ceiling filter, which should be changed about once or twice a year by changing the less expensive exhaust filters on a more frequent basis. And those should be changed maybe every 2 to 4 weeks, depending upon the volume of the paint jobs that are going through the booth. Any questions from anybody?
What's the model number again?
It's called a Titan, T-I-T-A-N, AccuDraft. That's it right there. Yep.
Any other question?
Mr. Chairman, I was an art teacher for 33 years. We
Yep.
used spray booths all the time, and they weren't efficient at all.
Yep.
But we have neighbors. It's a heavy, thick, settled area around there. We have a lot of neighbors. So you're telling me that this spray booth is so efficient that no fumes will be released from the spray booth into the atmosphere around this neighborhood? Or is that my understanding, or is that not my
No,
understanding?
the exhaust, there's no regulation regarding that at all. It's basically that the filters in the exhaust, which are in the floor, So when they're spraying the car, any paint particulate that does not wind up on the vehicle and does bypass that is going to be captured in the filters below. Anything else that's going to bypass that is going to go up through the exhaust stack. Now, that can be addressed by how high the exhaust stack is above the roof line. Generally, codes could say from city to city, they want it to be 6 to 8 feet above the roof line. If there are abutters and you're concerned about the airflow, you wanted to have the exhaust as high as possible, then the exhaust stack can be raised to a higher level. We sent along with the booth a certain amount of stack for a standard application, and then anything that would have to be raised to a higher height beyond that would be done by a sheet metal worker to just extend the ductwork higher. And if it got to a certain height with one and so forth, he'd probably want to have it guy wired down to tie it in place.
So, okay, so I understand that, but I'm asking, so what I'm asking is, there are going to be toxic fumes released into the atmosphere, whether you have a high stack or a low stack, you will be having fumes into the atmosphere. Am I correct?
There will be fumes exhausted into the atmosphere, and that's true with any
And they are
booth in the area.
toxic?
That's up to the paint. I have nothing to do with the paint, only the booth.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You going to wrap up now?
That's it, I'm going to wrap up.
Okay, because I want to ask the city.
The letter that I sent to the chief today that you've now received identifies the particular violations in light of the fact that I couldn't get a reinspection by the chief inspector, Mr. Maniff. The first violation he cited was the fire prevention system needed to be repaired. Somehow it had been, I believe wires were pulled out of it. So that has been done by Mr. Pagliarulo Electric. As the pictures dictate, all the entering and exiting ways from the property are now free from obstruction. A waste oil storage tank has now been installed on the property. Oil Heat Services pulled a permit for waste oil and paid cash for that permit in the amount of $300. We did attain, we have applied and attempted to apply for 2 other permits Mr. Maniff has said we need, and that is, I believe it's a settling torch and the waste oil permit. He has yet to give us the permit, notwithstanding this particular process. The tires that he cited are now properly stored on racks, and additional fire extinguishers have been installed as well. I've already spoken on the issue of his violation of occupancy permit. I think the committee needs to evaluate the evidence. I would ask that if there are any more questions on the violations, that we be given an opportunity to respond. And that'll be it for me, Mr. Chairman.
Since a couple of names were mentioned, Chief, would you like to respond to some of the statements that were made?
Councilors, excuse me. I would only say that Council was very liberal with his statements relative to refusals. At no time did I ever refuse inspections, and I don't do the inspections, and nor did I refuse to meet with them. We have, there is ongoing litigation. City Council had advised us at that time not to discuss it further. Based on that, and Council had been barraging myself and Inspector Maniff on weekends with emails, you know, with different things. And understandable that that's at his leisure, but it wasn't at my leisure. I would only say we based this on a site plan letter that was agreed to by his client. And his client, I have respect for him as a businessman. He tried to run an operation on Furlong Drive. But as council has stated, we did go back there on 4 different occasions over the years for the same thing. Now, if you're not going to fix it, then why bother, and you continue to operate? And the same thing as this. We haven't stopped their business operation with lack of permits. They've operated without the acetylene permit. They've operated without the waste oil permit. That's not a biggie. We're not holding them up. They're doing their business. In the normal course of events, when we do inspections, Chief Inspector Maniff is very thorough. We go into a regular home or any type business, he checks the jacket to see what the occupancy is of any building. And if we're going in and the people say it's a 2-family and we check the jacket and it says, no, it's not a 2-family, it's a single. We apprise the people, this is what you have to do. Inspector Maniff was due diligent in finding out what the occupancy was at that time. It was for, and there's 16 different definitions, but repair auto, storage and repair. And originally that was for the existing building that over the course of many years in the Anzoni family, from the blue bus service to up to school buses, was always operated out of that building with storage of buses and repairs. And at some time there was a limo company, I think, in there and something else. And the same thing, it was for the repair of the existing fleet of business that they were doing at that time. This, we had gone into a different category by they wanted to operate a repair shop for the general public. And it brought into all different types requirements that we would have along with that. And we don't contest the spray booth. Generally, these spray booths are UL listed. They're highly regulated by the DEP as well, and they cost a lot of money. And that was the problem with Majestic at the time, I believe, on Furlong Drive. He didn't want to invest in that. But that's not our problem. This is what the law and the code say, and that we try to enforce it. We try to act as a business, as the businesses we're treating. And you have to abide by it. We make everybody else abide by it. We just recently shut down we thought was a repair shop, and it turned out he was doing auto body at, what? Revere Beach Parkway. Been there years. We didn't know. He was operating an auto body. Had a close-up shop. I felt bad for the guy, businessman. So he said he was doing it 10 years. He had been licensed or zoned as a repair shop, and he was doing auto body. No spray booth, no, nothing. No proper storage of paints, flammable paints. I mean, things like that. These are all we're doing. This is what the code is. We don't ask for more. And in particular, during the site plan, we did ask for a little more based on what we thought the garage at that time, changing it into the new operation of a public repair, that we said that repair the fire alarm system and add a suppression system. And I've apprised that of council a couple of times when he's when he's requested me to meet. I said, get the suppression system in, and then we'll meet. But he's said now that the site plan letter doesn't mean anything. Our contention is they agreed to it. We're the authority having jurisdiction. We felt the hazard was increased in that neighborhood. It wasn't in the proper zoning at that time, and then we added in the sprinkler system for the building. Spray booth, emails, the letters. The letters from council, I got one on the 17th, one today here. His comment was, here, I saved the delivery fee. Okay. The 4 and 12 citations on Furlong Drive, as I stated, just a businessman trying to survive and make some money. Maybe that's great that he's going to do it on that location. That's not for us to say, but what we say is, okay, if this is the operation, this is what we require, and that's it. Now, relative to Mr. Pagliaro, I'll speak to him offline, relative to his assessment of what needs to be done for fire suppression systems, because I will never tell him what size wire to use in a device at some other place else. So I don't know how much credence Mr. Pagliaro will say to that he said they don't need it.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for your comment. Chief Inspector Maniff?
May I just speak?
Only because their names were mentioned in the public committee, yes.
And even though Councilor didn't mention my name, he did refer to me and some of the things that have gone on in this case, and I did want to address those things specifically. And just for the record, my name is Ira Zalesnik. I'm with the firm of Lawson and Whiteson, and I've been representing the City Council in this matter in the court proceedings. What I'd suggest to the Council is that there have been some things done in this case that were designed to create some confusion, and they succeeded, and they did in fact create confusion along the way, confusion on my part, confusion on the part of the building inspector, and confusion amongst other city officials. We think that confusion is now over and should be over in further deliberations by the council. The confusion comes from, I would suggest, what this building was and what the use was prior to the applicant's effort to change it to an auto body shop. During the course of time when this building was in the Anzoni family and their businesses, what it really was, and this was crystallized in Mr. Thomas Anzoni's testimony in court in 2015, after all of this had taken place. His testimony was that it was a building used primarily for the storage of buses, and first the bus company, and then school buses, and other similar kinds of transportation vehicles. It was not being used to repair automobiles or automobiles belonging to members of the public. It wasn't being used for auto body work. It was being used mainly for storage. He also testified that there was some incidental repair work done to those vehicles while they were stored there. And that's to be expected. If a bus needed oil change, it would have its oil changed. This was very light repair work for the vehicles already being stored there. And that zoning classification is properly considered to be in 1708-165, which is called commercial automotive storage parking. And I'll read it to you because it's brief. Quote, commercial automotive storage parking means bulk and limited access storage or parking of automobiles, buses, or trucks, which are not accessory to a principal use and shall include parking restricted by contract or lease to employees of the contracting party or lessee. That is an apt description for what is going on there, as opposed to the use that Mr. My brother Councillor wants to put to it, that it was a garage commercial, which is 17.08.320, which means any building wherein is kept or stored one or more motor vehicles for the purposes of a motor vehicle repair or service station, and shall include self-service stations. That's what's going on now, but what was going on in the past was the primarily the storage of buses in that facility, and more recently storage of landscape vehicles and plows and things of that sort. Storage use rather than an active repair use. And this confusion was created because the usage of the building was light up until this petitioner started to conduct his business there, and there is indeed some question as to whether any business was conducted there at all. But I would suggest that to the council that the appropriate manner of proceeding in this instance would have been to say this was not a commercial garage in the past. We want to make it a commercial garage, and the remedy there would be to apply to this council for a special permit to go from one non-conforming use to another, from the commercial automotive storage parking use to the commercial garage use. And I would suggest again that part of the confusion is the similarity of all the names in the zoning code, but they are separate and distinct classifications. And this was the site plan review committee letter dated May 15, 2014, was before the case was tried in court and before any testimony was received from Mr. Anzoni to really clarify what the use was. This letter, by the way, set forth requirements for the operation of a non-conforming commercial garage at that facility, which included a fire suppression system, and that fire suppression system was not installed, and indeed the inspection by Mr. Maniff demonstrated that the fire alarm system itself was broken and not in repair, and here he is operating this facility with these necessary items not being there, and not being, the ones that were there were not repaired. I just wanted to address those points. I'd like to reserve any comments for after the other city officials testify as to what they found. But I did want to clarify that at the outset.
Thank you, Mrs. Lesnick. Inspector Maniff, would you like to have anything to say?
Hi. Just on a couple of issues, that there was no permits pulled to repair the interior fire alarm system by Lenny Pagalugo after the fact when they were written up in January. It took them 4 months to correct any of the violations that, if they even are corrected at this point, that was written up in January 25th, because I rewrote them up on an order of notice in April, 4 months later, that he failed to obey the fire marshal's order of notices. There was a permit pulled to fix the outside enunciator from another electrician, but it had nothing to do with the interior fire alarm system. I did issue him a permit to repair the waste oil storage tank. He was not issued a permit to store and maintain waste oil. Okay. And as the gentleman talked about the spray booth, he neglected to mention anything about the mixing room that goes along with the spray booth, which is part of the auto body shop. But on the other part of it is, and the occupancy permit was requested based on advice from council, and on the part is that he did not comply with the site plan letter of review that he was agreed to at that time. So, I mean, and go back to Majestic Auto, we've been down there numerous times with the Board of Health, which unfortunately is not here today, but and they were cited, and I cited them at least 4 times myself, and I've had the police down there to shut them down after the fact is that they refused to comply with the original orders that they had to be shut down. And we had to have police presence down at that location. So, and, you know, he talks about the, I think the pictures, I think the city clerk gave you pictures that we took back from January to April, which is self-explanatory. So, you know, the Attorney Simeone is clearly misleading the council on what took place and what didn't take place.
Thank you, Inspector Maniff. Inspector Bennett.
Benjamin D. Cristoforo, Inspector of Buildings.
Right. Do you have anything you want to say?
Yes, just to
Clarify.
continue what Councilor Zalesnik. Oh, sorry. City's council, Ira Zalesnik said, there was misclassification of the use, the pre-existing non-conforming use, from automotive, commercial garage to automotive repair. And that lack of, that miscommunication or misclassification does require now a special permit. That was all in light of the testimony from the owner.
Thanks, Benny. You want to wrap up, Council? Ira Zalesnik, and then Larry, and then the people, naturally.
Yeah, and I think it's important for the council to hear from the various neighbors involved. The law in this Commonwealth is that the citizens have a right to have the zoning and ordinances enforced according to their terms. And whether or not there were mistakes made along the way, that is a right belonging to the citizenry that the zoning ordinances be enforced. What you have here before you is a question of whether or not the proposed use as an auto body shop would be more detrimental than the prior use. And the prior use, eliminating all confusion, was that of the commercial auto storage parking facility. This is a much more intensely used facility as either an auto repair or an auto body service. It was a very lightly used building before, mainly for storage, a passive use. I would suggest to you that the proposed use is more detrimental to the surrounding area than the prior use correctly understood. The judge sent this back for reconsideration, and it's appropriately before the council for reconsideration, and I would suggest that the council recognize that the use is more detrimental that's proposed than what was there before, and act accordingly on the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Simeone?
In Exhibit A, where I gave you the judge's decision, the judge describes Mr. Anzoni's testimony. Now, if you look at the city's attorney's position is, Mr. De Cristoforo on site plan made a mistake. Therefore, we get to start all over again. Wrong answer. When he was in trial, that's when he needed to figure it out. When he heard the testimony was different, that's when he needed to raise the issue. But it wouldn't have helped. Let me tell you what the judge says. It's on page 4. Any one of you can read it. It's footnote 4. It says, the judge writes, at the time of the city council decision, the most recent commercial garage use had been the Anzoni's family storing and repairing of school buses. Since then, as described in this paragraph, the plaintiff has begun repairing automobiles at the property. I find these comparable. I find these are comparable garage commercial uses based on the building inspector's agreement to the plaintiff's current auto repair operation. Therefore, when I conclude below that an auto body shop would not be more detrimental to the neighborhood than the current auto body shop, I am also concluding that the auto body repair shop would not be more detrimental to the neighborhood than the former school bus repair at the property. So your lawyer's asking you to deny this so he can go back and spend some more of your money and the citizens' money. I think it's great. I don't think it's the way to go. if he had a decision, that was his decision, nobody else's, during that trial, if he wanted to raise that issue, there's a theory called res judicata. It means the issue's been settled. This issue has been settled.
Thank you, Mr. Simeoni. Now, I'd like to open it up to the residents of the, yes, absolutely. Councilor Zalesnik?
I don't want to go too far on the back and forth, but the applicable principle of law here is the one that I stated, that the citizens of Revere have the right to have the zoning ordinance enforced and applied according to its terms. The footnote by the judge was, I think, reflective of the confusion that we all had as to what the prior use was, and I would suggest that if he considered it fully as opposed to the footnote, he would reach a different conclusion. The other point of res judicata, and it's a fancy legal name for the doctrine that you're entitled to a day in court, but only one day in court. It does not apply in this circumstance because we are back in front of the council for a new hearing and consideration of this proposal in light of the judge's decision. And I think this is open to the council for reconsideration as I've set forth. So for that reason, I respectfully disagree with Mr. Simeoni.
Thank you, Counsel. Now, would anyone like to get up and speak from the audience? Abutters? Please come up and identify yourself and where you live.
My name is Paul McSweeney. I'm a resident of 18 Folsom Street. Council members, we're here today representing the residents of Folsom Street and its neighboring streets. We urge you to listen to some of the facts that we found looking up and present and deny this special permit to Majestic Motors here today. Mr. Simeoni told the residents at a previous meeting that our complaints of parking, traffic, loud music, and operating outside of normal business hours and the smell of the paint had no validity, and that if we brought them back to you, that they would go nowhere. We firmly believe that all these issues, along with many others, are strong reasons not to allow the business to operate at 855 Broadway. First and foremost, per Municipal Code 1716-040 and 1716-150, a special garage is not permitted in the general business district. Exceptions should not be made simply because it's a non-conforming structure. It's very difficult to find why that is, why it's not allowed in the general business district, but in my opinion, it has to do with the fact that there are residents near it. Per Municipal Code 1740-030, a special permit may only be awarded if it determines that such a reconstruction, extension, alteration, or change shall not be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure to the neighborhood. This building originally housed a bus maintenance garage. There are numerous environmental and health risks involved in this type of business, and these are clearly detrimental to the neighborhood, much more than a bus garage or a mechanical operation. A special garage will house chemicals and flammable materials, paints that are toxic to humans. It was stated earlier in their testimony. The paint and filters must be stored in properly sealed containers and disposed of in a proper manner due to the hazardous waste. There are families with children nearby. That, along with the rest of the neighborhood, will be exposed to these chemicals. Majestic Motors has been incapable of operating a safe, clean, and legal business at both 14 Furlong and 855 Broadway. The city fire inspector told you today and numerous times they've submitted numerous violations spanning over at least 10 years. In 2006, they were found in violation of spray painting while under 2 ceases and desist orders. A truck was being painted and other vehicles were being prepped for painting. The garage did not have a spray booth, did not have a proper spray booth, and did not have a mixing room at the time. There were no fire alarm systems, no suppression systems, and hazardous materials were being disposed of improperly. In 2013, there were improper maintenance of the booth, a waste oil spill containment area that was being used for storage, a mixing room fire suppression system out of date, and pull stations that were covered with duct tape. In January at 855 Broadway, they were found in violation of fire codes, exit codes, and waste oil storage. As recent as March 2016, the Board of Health responded to 14 furlong for health code violations. The Fire and Health Department regulations have been consistently ignored by this business. In regards to the paint, the waterborne paint does not smell is not as caustic as solvent-based paint, but it doesn't mean that that it can't be toxic. Despite reduced VOC levels, waterborne paint feature plenty of chemicals that are deadly to humans. Because of the slow drying times, the paint lingers in the air longer. Also with waterborne paints, only the base color coat of the paint system is waterborne. All other layers, including the clear coat, are still solvent-based and sprayed in the normal way. We have spoken with one of the supposed subtenants of 855 Broadway. He denied ever having sublet this property. Even if he had, it was James Stvil's responsibility to ensure that the business and property were operating according to law. With repeated fire code violations, municipal code violations, improper business practices, and questionable character, it is difficult to believe that the safety and health codes will be followed at 855 Broadway. We believe that if this permit is granted here or in court, it will only be a matter of time before another hazardous contamination affects the neighborhood. Based on all of this information, we, along with 50 other signatures from the neighbors that signed a petition that you have, are asking you to deny this permit. Today, he stated that it was the owner's fault of 14 Furlong Street that these violations occurred, and in the meeting he told us that it was the subtenant's fault. And at no point does he ever take any responsibility for all of these violations. It is hard to believe, even with a state-of-the-art booth, that this will be properly maintained. There is not, I mean, the proof says differently. It's here, it's with all the violations that are here. And it is hard to believe that this will be followed. That's all I have. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? Identify yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Jody Gupta, and I am an abutter almost to this property. And I just want to say that we moved here a year ago, and we got to know our neighbors very well. And there, next to me is a family with just 2 little children growing up in Revere. On the other side of me, there's a woman who's been here for years, and her mother lives up on the top floor. And I'm just concerned that they're saying that there's toxins being emitted from this building. How high do you have to go before it eclipses our neighborhood? So I just want to know that we're making a decision based on fact, that we understand what that AccuDraft Titan is actually doing, that we understand what the exhaust system is doing to our neighborhood. So that's what I would ask of you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Hi, I'm 22 Folsom Street. 22 Folsom Street is on?
Yeah, that's good.
My concerns, quality of life concerns, common sense concerns. I'm told that my concerns really, the judge really does not consider them valid, but all due respect, the judge doesn't live on Folsom Street. The applicant said he's going to have at least 4 employees, plus an administrator, plus himself. That's 6 people, that's 6 cars. There is not room on Folsom Street for 1 more car, never mind 6 more cars. I don't know where they're going to park. And as far as the damaged cars, those cars are not all going to be in that shop at all times. He's got room in there for 3 being worked on, plus 5 stored, I believe he said. He's going to have a lot more cars than that around the neighborhood. If you drive by any body shop in the city, you'll see damaged cars parked all around the buildings, and that's just something we don't want to live with. And it's just, I just don't think a body shop on Broadway. There's already 3 in the area. There's 3 right down the street at the road. You got that rotary that's a beautiful rotary, and the first thing you see coming around that corner is damaged cars, tow trucks. It's just, I don't think it's the proper place for it. And I know he's got a Broadway address. And the same thing happened across the street. And I know it's a different issue, but we were lied to about that building. That was a Broadway address also. But that garage door went up 50 feet down Folsom Street, in a residential street. That's where the business was being done. And we were told that that garage door was only going to be to go in, and they were going to come out on Broadway. That never happened, not once. And we said it wouldn't happen, and it didn't. And this business is on Broadway, but they have that huge garage door that is on Folsom Street. That's where the tow trucks are going to back up, that's where the traffic is going to be blocked, and that's where all the mess is going to be. So I just hope you vote this down. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Richard F. Fernandez. I live at 869. My name is Richard F. Fernandez. I live at 869 Broadway, and I have the same concerns as my neighbors. I also looked at the DEP records. At one time, the site was contaminated, and they had to pull out 4 tanks, underground storage tanks. And even though it's cleaned now to the DEP standards at that time, my concern is that if there is another operation in there that fails to properly follow the DEP standards, that the already elevated levels of contamination that still remain in the soil will again leak down, as the tanks did several years ago. I forget exactly, maybe 15 years ago. And it went into my basement and into my neighbor's backyard on Rose Street. And in addition, we have contamination across the street at the dry cleaners and at the gas station there. So a combination of people not doing the right thing will just cause down gradient effect. So my concern is, if we have an operator that already does not follow the regulations, and as these regulations have tightened over time, the situation is going to become intolerable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Anyone else? There being none, the City Council has a decision to make. We either can vote it on it this evening or lay it on the table until June 6th. What's the will of the council?
I'd like to vote it down.
We hear you. Arthur?
I'd like to take a vote this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman. Yep. Please. Patrick?
I would also, I don't choose to prolong this any longer.
I'd like to vote on it tonight.
Yes. John?
I would also.
Okay.
A point of information, if I may, just for
If you could.
clarification.
Right.
Before we vote on this. I grew up in that area, and that goes back some time. And I can honestly say, in good conscience, the only thing I ever saw at that site were, as Chief Doherty referred to, blue buses. It was called the service bus line. And the only work I ever saw being done in there was maybe changing the oil, vacuuming a bus, washing a bus, getting them ready for the next run. I never saw any auto body work or bus work being done in there. I'm sure there may have been, on occasion, minor mechanical work in there, but nothing major. And I just can't support this and vote to increase the
John, that's enough.
nonconformity. Thank you.
That's enough, thank you. There's a motion to disprove this application. Roll call of all the members.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. What are we disproving the, on what
With
grounds?
the application.
Right, but on what grounds? What are we going to be putting into the record is my question.
Do you have any, you take?
Mr. Chairman.
Would you like to have would you like to basically take a break in order to kind of come to an agreement on what we're going to put in as commentary?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, are you going to take a vote separately for the zoning subcommittee only, or then you're going to offer it out to the committee as a whole? So the zoning subcommittee will make a decision first, and then you will offer it out this evening to the committee of the whole.
based upon.
On the subcommittee, Patrick Keefe,
No.
Ms. McKenna,
No?
Powers,
No.
Judge Rotondo,
No, based on the recommendations of our council.
and Tony Zambuto.
No.
Okay, that makes that. Now, what do you have for information on that?
City Attorney Iris Lesnick had stated that the proposed use as an auto body shop would be more detrimental than the prior use, which was storage of buses and light repair.
I would suggest as a manner of going forward, my preference would be to have the opportunity to draft some more detailed findings to the council that could be considered as part of the report of the subcommittee to the full council and then considered by the full council. And to do that, I would like, is the council meeting in a week or 2 weeks? 2 weeks.
June 6th.
June 6th. I would like to have the opportunity to submit that to the council for the next meeting.
I think that's a good idea, to be on sound legal standing. Is that okay with the subcommittee and the members? Okay, a meeting adjourned.